to me that at last the ANC was telling the truth and making a very serious commitment. And therefore it was possible to say, vote ANC. So I'm saying, colleagues, I'm very, very glad indeed that we have so many of our people who have come, because indeed, as has been said, again, the bishop said this, the ANC doesn't belong to us who are members, but this is a product of our people. It belongs to the people, and none of us have got any right to destroy it, to weaken it, destroy it in any way. Indeed, as he was saying, just you look at who are these people who died and sacrificed and did all sorts of things to make sure that this ANC lives up to its obligations. And so we met here, as the provincial chair was saying, yesterday, day before. And the meeting started very well with the provincial secretary saying, as we make this assessment of the ANC in order to answer the question, what is it that we do to achieve its renewal? He said we need to be truthful to one another. Singaqhathani, sithethe inyaniso. And one of the things that we did was to quote what our late leader, Nelson Mandela, said in 1997. And he said, one of the negative features that had emerged, this was in 1997, 3 years after we went into government, is the emergence of careerism within our ranks. That many among our members see their membership of the ANC as a means to advance their personal ambitions, to attain power and access to resources for their own individual gratification. And he said they work, these people, to manipulate the movement to create the conditions for their success. And he said that in reality, for the last 3 years, we have found it difficult to deal with such careerists in a decisive manner. We ourselves have therefore allowed the space to emerge for these opportunists to pursue their counter-revolutionary goals to the detriment of our movement and struggle. That was in 1997. So the meeting discussed this question. Has that problem been solved? Of people who enter the ANC wear ANC t-shirts and they say, "Viva ANC, Viva," and know all of the songs, they toy very well and do all of that. But are they ANC? And so the provincial secretary said, let us look at a report that was given by the then secretary of the ANC, Kwetamantashe, in 2017, about the state of the ANC. And that in reality, what Gwetamantashe said 20 years after Madiba had spoken was to repeat what Madiba had said. And that is a consequence, some of what was happening, that there was a growing trust deficit between the people and the ANC, that there was a decline in the ethics, the values and traditions of the movement, that there was a perception of the ANC as entirely corrupt, and that we had a very poor quality of branches, members in general, and so on. That is a consequence of failure to address this problem, which Madiba had raised in 1997. 20 years later, we could say this is what is happening to the ANC. So when we meet, yesterday, day before, we were saying, have we attended to this challenge? And as the Secretary said, let us address this matter truthfully. Let me quote something else, which we did not quote over the weekend. And this was in 2007. It's one of these one of the almost last statements that I made while I was president of the ANC. And I was saying, I trust that all of us, this was at the ANC conference in December 2007, that all of us gave time to study and respond to the discussion document towards the centenary of the ANC. Title was, I can report to our colleagues that have graced us with their presence this morning that indeed the meeting considered all of these matters with the greatest seriousness, with an admission that we had not in fact addressed successfully all of these matters that have been raised over many years. And therefore that we must expect, because we had not addressed this matter raised by Nelson Mandela in 1997 about his careerists, because we had failed to address that matter, that we would have many of them within the organization. And therefore, when we say renewal, I think the point that the provincial chair made, can you renew the ANC with those careerists? And the answer was no, you can't. It doesn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense. That's a major challenge. If you have a Thabo Mbeki who is a careerist, and you say we can't renew the ANC with him in our midst, how do you get rid of him? That's a question that we've got to answer. It's a practical, real question. Point was made about accountability. The ANC gets elected by the people, as in this province, and to become the governing party. And as the governing party, it's got to deliver all of the services which are entitled, to which the people are entitled. And depends on this public service. That is the responsibility of the ANC, that governing party, to make sure that that public service does what is necessary in terms of the commitments that the ANC has made to the public when it said, let us grow South Africa together. That manifesto. Many years ago, there was, when we were still developing what is called the Kucha, that port. That was dealt with at the beginning as a presidential lead project. So the presidency in Pretoria had a very direct role to play with regard to that development of that port at Quebec. Then one day, the CEO of the project, he sends a very urgent message to say that money that was due to be allocated for that particular quarter was 4 weeks late, 6 weeks late, nothing was happening. What's the problem? Now, the process was that the Treasury would move money to the provincial government here, Eastern Cape, which would then move the money to the project. So when we checked, the Treasury said, no, the money went whenever it went. The problem was, the money did arrive here with the provincial government, Episho. But there were two officials who had to sign the papers in order to release the money. And these officials occupied the same floor in one building. And so one signed, but the office messenger was off sick. The result of which is that this signed document couldn't go to this other official to sign down the passage because the messenger was off sick. And that's a true story. The official couldn't stand up and walk 3 floors, three doors down to deliver this document to be signed. The point that is being made about the accountability of the public service is illustrated by that, and worse consequences arise from that. The reality is that when we ended our discussions yesterday, we agreed that what had happened was stage 1 of a process. It was only the beginning. In a sense, it was a beginning to admit what was wrong, to say honestly among ourselves there is something radically wrong, which is the first step to saying, therefore, something needs to be done to correct that. And indeed, I was very, very pleased that you'd have people from the meeting, members of the PEC, extended, who would say, let's start with ourselves here as members of this PEC. I'm saying this was step number 1 in a process that is going to be very, very challenging. The chairperson of the province did not say this morning, but he said it yesterday. I have not asked him whether I can report on what he said. But I listened very carefully, and he was very, very correct. I was very pleased he said it. In the 1997 conference that I spoke about, when Nelson Mandela spoke, I took a decision, which was that we must make absolutely certain that comrades understand that when you make a commitment, you stand, I'm running to be chairperson of the ANC in the Eastern Cape. You are making a commitment to be a loyal servant of the ANC. And that's all. And do away with this expectation that because I'm going to be chair of the ANC, therefore I'm going to be premier. So that conference in Mafikeng said these are two separate things. And the decision was that in provinces which the ANC had the majority, the premiers would be chosen in the same way as the national ministers. And that was a formal decision of the ANC conference. And we implemented that. You remember that over a long time, you had a number of women ministers in the Free State. Medireko, Beatrice Mashoff. Ace Mahashule was the provincial chair of the ANC. But it seemed to us that we could not appoint him as premier. So he remained provincial chair because ANC had elected him. But that process, decided in Mafikeng in '97, meant that we could take a decision as to whether we think this person should be the premier. Comrade Oscar raised that yesterday and said he having become premier, now he understands that the business of combining these two posts is wrong. I agree with him, it's wrong. And what was done in Mafikeng in 1997 was changed in Polokwane in 2007. So that whoever is elected president of the ANC automatically is our candidate to be president of the Republic. Premier same. On the basis of a false argument, it was called the two centers of power. There's no such thing. It was cooked up in order to achieve particular objective. I'm mentioning these colleagues to indicate some of the challenges that we're going to face. If we say, I'm glad that in this province, when we say let's go back to where we were in 1997 with regard to this matter. If you're chair of the ANC, you're chair of the ANC, that's fine. If you're premier, that's fine. But don't mix them up. I'm glad that if we come to this province and say that, Oscar will say, long live. But will that be the same in all the other provinces? Those are the challenges of this renewal of the ANC. Those are the challenges that are going to stand in our way. One of our colleagues here who identified himself as coming from the South African Communist Party raised some important questions. The enemy of the NDR, who's the enemy of the NDR? What about the forces of production, about the role of capital, the class position of leaders of the movement? I had hoped that as we look at the process of the renewal of the ANC, our colleagues from the South African Communist Party would make an input about that, the issues they are raising. What's the view of the Communist Party, our ally, about the questions that he was raising? I don't know, Oscar, what's the class position of your leadership? But I'm sure the party can answer that. It might help the ANC in the process of its renewal. I'd be also very interested in a matter that maybe is irrelevant for, not entirely, for the ANC. You know, the Communist Party is the party for socialist revolution. I'd be very, very interested to hear what the party is saying about that question. What it is doing and is going to do in order to bring about the victory of the socialist revolution. That might help, even in this process we're talking about, so that the ANC has a better understanding of the role of the Communist Party in the context of our struggle. Because the party has got that responsibility about the victory of the socialist revolution. I'm saying that, comrades, so that the party should not just see itself as a watchdog over the ANC. It must be aware of its own class responsibilities. And its first class responsibility is to ensure the success of the socialist revolution. But certainly, we would very much welcome an assessment by the party of ourselves. What's our class position? If that'll help us in terms of the renewal of the movement. The last point I must make is that it's very, very good indeed, as I was saying, that we have all of these colleagues who come from business, from NAFCOC, from the church, from the LGBTQI plus community, etc., to give this independent view about this. What is the state of the ANC? I hear the issues that are being raised about the need for the involvement of business in what we're doing. It is all very correct. Challenges that business is facing, maybe we're not responding properly. But I'm saying in this context, for them as people who are looking at the ANC as a formation, they might be members of the ANC themselves. But I'm saying as NAFCOC, they're looking at the ANC from outside. To be able to help the ANC to say, we think these are your problems, these are your challenges. Even to the point of even pointing at the individuals. A long time ago, I was saying to one of our colleagues, we're still in government, and I said to her, you know, I think we had been in government, I don't know, for 20 years, 10 years, and so on. So I said to her, you know, a couple of people have told me something about one of our colleagues, a minister, that he has been taking something and putting it in his pocket. I didn't know this. So she says, you didn't know? I said, no, I didn't. So she says, that fellow, since 1994, he has been known as Mr. 10%. There are other, I'm sitting there, I'm Vice Deputy President and President, and you don't see the things, but there are other people who can. But they don't come to say, that one, why do you appoint this one as a minister? That's Mr. 10%. I'm saying that capacity is with us in the communities to help the ANC to identify these challenges and to come and to say, please act on this. And that's why I'm very, very glad indeed that we're able to come here today. This discussion that is taking place in this province about the renewal of the ANC is a national discussion. It's a national discussion because the last national conference of the ANC in Nasrec 2017 said this renewal must happen, and said more or less that this was a matter of life and death for the ANC, the renewal. And therefore took the necessary decisions to make sure that this thing actually happens, the process of renewal. So I'm saying this is a national process. The province is doing part of what is a national effort to achieve that renewal. So we need to bring the ANC back to what that discussion document which I quoted just now towards the centenary of the ANC, to bring it back to where it was, where it ought to be. And that document, as I was saying, said any organizational review and renewal proposals for the ANC have got to pass one test. To what extent do they enhance the capacity of the movement to remain a trusted leader, a loyal servant of the people, and an agent for change? And that's the main challenge. I'm quite sure that in the course of answering that question, we'll have to answer these questions that have been raised. When you say that you are this servant of the people, this agent for change, practically, how does it show itself? How does it manifest itself? In the way in which government operates, in the way in which your individual members operate, in the way that has been said. You get people at national leadership of the ANC who openly defy decisions of the National Executive Committee and even take the ANC to court to challenge decisions of the National Executive Committee. What is that? That I'm saying, in order to show that you are that trusted leader, that loyal servant of the people, that agent for change, in the course of answering that question in the renewal process, I'm sure we'll be able to address the specific challenges. I do hope that befundisi bantu bamashishini and other people who are here, that you will stay with the ANC in that process of renewal. It's a difficult road, but we've got to go through with it. The Judicial Commission of Inquiry on State Capture reminds us as members of the ANC every day about what has gone wrong. And every day, ANC members are being trooped up there. Answer this, answer this, answer this. There's no way you can avoid this challenge of renewal. It's facing us daily. I was saying that Comrade Chair, the last point now is really the last point. Comrade Oscar Mabuyane mentioned the work that is being done with regard to what has been called the economic reconstruction and renewal. Economic reconstruction and reform of the country. In particular, to respond to the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. And a very, very positive message that came across, particularly last year, 2020, from the ANC, from government, from business, from the trade unions, saying this pandemic has exposed all of the wrong things, inequality, unemployment, and all of that. And that when we reconstruct and reform the economy, it's not to go back to where we were when the crisis started, to do much better than that. a very, very important message, because it meant that for the very first time since 1994, we had all of these social partners, the ones that meet in NEDLAC, all of them, more or less speaking in unison. Let us act together to do something about eradication of poverty and so on. Part of what we talked about over these 2 days was that work has still not been done to produce that united national plan, indeed to ensure that we eradicate poverty, unemployment, and so on. That's part of our tasks. I'm mentioning that in the end, colleagues, comrades, to say, even success with regard to that, which means eradicating this poverty which is impacting so negatively on millions of our people. And our colleagues from Basekomani were saying that, Babkoman, that we don't want to be delivered with food parcels on election days. The people must have food. Fundamental to the achievement of that is this renewal of this organization, which continues to be trusted by our people as their true representative. It must renew itself, because that too means it will put us on course to this eradication of this poverty, which is impacting so many negatively on millions of our people. Thanks a lot, and thanks for coming.
Thank you very much, Comrade Mbeki, for that input. In order to conclude this session, Geshlalo, I made an undertaking in your absence to these people that you will come back and close the session. Phambi kokuba ivalwe ndim kufuneka ivalwe nguwe. Ukhona ozonisebenzela wathi alilunge laqhinga lakho loba ungayivali inhlangano. Ndiyacela ke sihlalo, take the portion.
Thank you very much, Comrade Deputy Chair, who's actually a chair of this very important meeting in the history of our movement, in our province in particular. If I was not the chairperson of the province, I would have said no, but the former president has instructed me to come and say something on his behalf, that the response to NAFCOC on their request to have their own time with him for further engagements, furthering further what they've raised in this important meeting. The answer to that is yes. Uvile ke siya. Ndonqena ukuthi ke diya kuba kuyaba ngathi kukho into ethilethile. Kodwa ke ngumsebenzi wakho lo qhwesha uqinisekisa uba upresident uyabuya to handle the situation. Okwam nje kukubuyela ubulela, when we were trying to summarize closing the extended PEC yesterday, I said this, and I would probably want to repeat it again, that if the 8th of January 1912 was an epoch-making event, that is the formation of the ANC itself, as a direct response to a series of struggles that our people went through, led by our chiefs, etc. The 16th to 20th of December 2017, the 54th National Conference of the ANC was indeed a Damascus moment to this project of renewal. The president himself said, as he articulates it from Madiba's version, these things are going to come. Actually, they were said even before Madiba by the President OR himself. What are we likely to experience when we will be a governing party? What are the challenges that we must prepare ourselves for? So, President General OR Thabo himself articulated this point. So it's not a question that we were not ready. That's why we had a ready to govern document. So psychologically, we've been prepared for this eventuality. We said it's now or never for the future of this country, for the future of our people, that the ANC must renew. Kuba kukho abefundisi namhlanje Bishop bawo umjoli Bishop Nopece ndike ndakhangela apha eBhayibhileni into yoba ithini iBhayibhile ngerenewal. Ndadibana noPaul phaa kumaRoma phaya eshumeni esibini ivesi yesibini uthi uPawulos phaya i-renewal is a process of shedding the old outer covering and putting on the new. This takes in the spirit of your mind, takes place in the spirit of your mind. Uchopa, uPaul. So, ukuqinisekisa uba ndizayifunda ke le 10th chapter kaDr. Luke, uba uhlathi ebethetha ngayo pha umfundisi uHeartland. Sizokwazi uconnecta nezi zinto ebefana uba siyazifunda siziqonde uba some of these issues azenzeki ngoku. Zazike zenzeka ngaphambili. So lamabali asincedisa into kokuba siziqonde ubheka phambili. President, when we met in that 6-hour-long meeting, you raised another issue that I thought you would raise, but thanks that you didn't raise, which I came back and shared with comrades, that you asked me a question that in this process of restoration and changing and all that, but why are we changing the original meaningful names of our places? So I internalized that point. Xa uzawutshintsha le ndawo abantu bakwazi uzi-identifya ngayo bonke uyibize ngenye into uzama ukwenzani? Uzawuthini ngaba bangakholelwayo kule nto ufuna uyidala ngokutsha? So these are lessons that we learn as we trying to lead as the current generation. We agreed, comrades, that this process is not an event. It's an ongoing process that must be measured to help the African National Congress when it confronts people to give scorecard. That the PwC will then develop a clear program of action for the PEC to roll it out, also meet the business, because in every department, enough cooking it basic. So enough cooking so most of my ufuna barani businesses zabo, bangarani uhulumende. So ngathi bafuna uyohlala edeskini pha urhulumente ethi ukuthi ikhona le nto irongo urhulumente angayenzi kakuhle. So asizukwazi ka uba sibe nonjoli uyakrokrisa. Uthi xa ubekiwe uba jolela abantu basheke bekroka. Funeka abantu bangabi naxhala. Kuthi noba kunikwe bani izinto zikarhulumente kuthi hayi that process was credible. But I must say that it's one of the concerns that the business has been raising consistently. That's why we have said in the 6th administration, and whatever that we do as part of the renewal, is to be transparent about procurement processes of government. I think for the first time that even during this upheaval, COVID and London, we're the only province that took out all those who benefited in the public. Not only companies, including directors of the companies, because we are looking at the public scrutiny to say, lower, ngusibari kabani, lower, ngumzala kabani, beningamazi nini. I think that's exactly the point that President is trying to say to us, that the public participation and activism will help us unearth some of the hidden truths that we don't know. So it's part of the renewal. You must be ready for accountability. You must be prepared for transparency. You must be ready to take responsibility. So these are key fundamental principles that will actually shape us. And I can tell you, the issues of local beneficiation and other things, including what was happening, more than 70% of people who were actually providing government with the PPE, etc., were local business people. More than 75%, for the first time, on how government would have been working. The problem nje yethu into kokuba xa kunikwe abanye abantu abamnyama akwanikwa abantu baziyo akunikwanga abantu. And therefore that thing is corrupt. This is the biggest problem. Yes, self-hate that we must be able to. So we're not here to discuss transactions and tenders. Umthetho uthi masingaxoxi tenders sisi politicians. We're meeting here as politicians. The issue is that what principles are guiding all this functioning of government, etc. So the process that we're going to develop will be able to have such kind of robust discussions so that we are not found to be in the cookie jar. So we will engage with business so that the business stop being corrupted by officials. President, it's an open secret that we are dealing with a very endemic, systemic problem of corruption. Even the business participate in that. With all the kickbacks, bribery, and all issues that we hear about, these are things that are being transacted between individuals, where also the business participates in that. So I think out of the process of renewal, we've got to make that, but business will be free if the system of government guarantees this credibility that everyone is looking for. So the ANC, as we have said, ifikelele kwixesha lokokuba thina singamalungu nenkokheli zayo sinciphe khona ukuze iANC ikhule. Kwaye funeka sibe ready to die for something that is going to live than to live for something that is going to die. Enkosi kakhulu.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chairperson. Undinika umyalelo kadlulayo abantu babulela abantu.